Economic Development. Welcome to the panelists. Welcome to all of our participants today. We've got a great panel of experts that's going to talk a bit about import-export. But before we do that, I wanted to introduce them. We have with us today to present to you RJ Ball, who is the Director of Industry Development for Empire State Development. If you want to wave there, RJ. We also have Rosanna Masucci, Director of U.S. Department of Commerce Commercial Service Office in Buffalo. Rosanna. William Kate is Executive Director of the Toronto GTA chapter of the American Chamber of Commerce in Canada. William. Jim Trubitz, Vice President, Mohawk Global Trade Advisors. Jim, thanks for joining us. And we also have Dean Wood, who is the CEO of BorderWorks Logistics right here in our business park. Thank you all for being here. Appreciate it very much. And I wanted all of our participants to know that we will be recording this session. And for those that missed it, you'll be able to find it on our website. A couple of housekeeping items before we get going. Attendees are going to stay muted throughout the entire presentation. Questions are going to be asked through the Q&A panel, and that's located right at the bottom of your screen. You'll find it by clicking the button with the three dots there at the bottom of your screen. In the event that we are unable to answer all of your questions during the workshop, we're going to follow up with you afterwards and get you the information you need, so don't worry about that. And today's program is meant to provide you with an overview of the various programs. Any of our presenters have told us that they'd be happy to schedule a meeting with you individually to discuss any of the programs in more detail. Okay, next slide, Kathy. I'm going to give you, this is my contact information, and Kathy, everyone's going to be receiving the slide deck afterwards, correct? And when they do, the links are all live on the slide deck, correct? Yes. So that when they get them and they want to contact somebody, you click on their email address, you get right to them. So I'm the commissioner of the Niagara County Department of Economic Development. I want to give you a quick 30,000-foot view of the programs that we offer here at the Center for Economic Development. Next slide, Kathy. A whole slew of programs through the Department of Economic Development, Business Growth and Retention. We reach out to 100 companies every year to talk about any issues that they may have. We like to get 2 companies at the very beginning stages of any potential expansion. That's very important. Workforce training and assistance, absolutely free of charge. The county has an employment and training office that offers these programs, again, absolutely free of charge. Site selection assistance. If a company is looking for a site or a building here in Niagara County, we keep an inventory of available sites and buildings. All you would need to do is reach out to us with your square footage needs and any other needs or requirements, like ceiling height has to be a certain height, dock doors, etc. There are brownfield assistance programs through the Niagara County Brownfield Revolving Loan Fund. We can talk more about that in a one-on-one. Low-cost power and energy efficiency programs. There are a number of options here through the New York Power Authority and through Niagara County through its own low-cost power program. And Niagara County is a PACE county, which means Energize Open Sea PACE. It's another financing program that's available from Niagara County. We have an affiliate data center. We are a clearinghouse of all types of data and research from the Census Bureau and other organizations that we can assist any company with. And again, we're a one-stop shop for economic development services here. If you go to the next slide, Kathy, you'll see that our neighbor in this building is the Niagara County Industrial Development Agency. Along with our department and the IDA and the Chamber of Commerce and the Small Business Development Center, that's that one-stop shop for services that we were talking about on the previous slide. The IDA can offer real property tax abatements for any company on a sliding scale, a 15-year schedule, a 10-year schedule, 5-year schedule on property tax abatements. And with that comes sales tax abatements on all materials, construction materials, as well as acquisition and installation, any machinery and equipment, furniture, fixtures, any type of equipment like that. We also abate the mortgage recording tax, which is 0.75%. There's a micro enterprise assistance grant program out there right now for micro companies with 5 full-time equivalent employees or less. And there are loan funds through the IDA. They provide gap financing to bridge the gap between owner equity and bank financing for industrial, warehouse, R&D, and business services projects. The maximum amount of the grant is about $250,000 or 1/3 of the total project. So that's a quick 30,000 foot view of our Center for Economic Development. We are just a phone call away if you've got any questions, and there's our information. So with that being said, I want to get to the stars of the show today, and they are our panelists. And the first up is my friend RJ Ball from Empire State Development. RJ, take it away.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, so my name is RJ Ball. I'm the Senior Director of Industry Development and Foreign Trade at Empire State Development. I work across two departments of the agency. Empire State Development, of course, is the economic development arm of New York State. I work in the Strategic Business Division and Global New York. Today, my presentation will be on Global New York, but I would ask you also to keep in the back of your mind if you have business expansions that do not involve exporting, we can help you with that too, and that's what my function is in the Strategic Business Division. You could go to the next slide, Kathy. So Global New York, our mission is to promote competitiveness, foster economic activity by helping New York State small businesses export their products and services globally. It's exactly what it sounds like. So we offer certain programs that help promote your products globally, and we help you enter foreign markets and market those products. Next slide, please. So here's a map of the state that shows the way the state breaks up regions, and each one of those regions is represented by a person like myself. In Global New York, I represent only the Western New York region. In my role in strategic business, I work across the entire state. And on the right, you'll see that industry clusters map. Some of those things are evolving. There's a couple industry sectors that you might note that are actually growing in Western New York, and will probably get checked in those boxes in the near future. But that basically shows you where the critical mass of each of these products that get exported outside of New York State are. Next slide, please. This is just a list of the contacts across the state. If you're Western New York based, I'll be the person that you want to talk to anyways. But if we do have any attendees from other parts of the state, I mean, feel free to reach out to me and I can direct you to one of my colleagues if you're in a different region. Next slide, please. That's kind of just a repeat of what that coverage is. So this map shows you the foreign offices that we contract through Global New York. These are actual trusted offices that work for Empire State Development, and some of the programs that we're going to talk about in a second, these offices are very relevant because what these offices do is they provide a slew of free services to New York State based companies that are looking to export. So you'll see we have pretty wide coverage. We have Europe, Israel, China, and India. We are that office is solely focused on foreign direct investment coming from India to New York State, but we do have coverage in India through both the Indian and European office if there are folks that would like to start exporting products to India. The South Africa office actually covers the entire continent, and the Mexico office actually works in the additional represented areas listed below down in South America. Next slide, please. So we have three major programs in Global New York that we use that we'll go over today. Export Marketing Assistance, which we call service, which we call EMAS, State Trade Expansion Program, which we call STEP, and the Global New York Grant Fund Program, which is money that is granted out of the Empire State Development Economic Development Fund. Next slide, please. So EMAS is the first one that we'll talk about. So EMAS, Export Marketing Assistance Service, basically what this is we utilize those foreign offices that you saw on that map to help companies get market entry into these foreign markets. This is a program that is fully funded and costs nothing to the companies that participate. But it gives companies an opportunity to work directly with foreign trade representatives, find sales agents, distribution channels, and it's a great benefit to companies that you would normally pay quite a bit of money for. Our offices will also give you market reports and market intelligence, help you formulate your plan to really break into those foreign markets and help you pinpoint what actually makes sense, since it can be hard to read what opportunities actually exist in a foreign market and kind of what the dangers are when you enter a new foreign market. Next slide, please. So this is the eligibility criteria for the EMAS program. It's pretty straightforward. Of course, you have to be a New York State company. The Empire State Development only promotes New York State-based companies. And at least 1 year in business, 500 employees or less, because we follow the SBA guidelines for small businesses when it comes to our programs in Global New York. 51% product value added in New York State. That's pretty loose. I mean, honestly, if you're based in New York, you probably have that, but we made it product value adds. It's not actually fabrication of product. So it's not a very stringent requirement. And honestly, the 51% for New York State is a preference really more than it is a requirement. And then you see the link there, and I'd be happy if anybody contacts me to send out that link and talk to you more about it. But that's how you apply to EMAS. It's a pretty simple, straightforward application, and basically we're collecting information from you to discover what you need from our foreign offices, and then we make that connection. Next slide, please. So the State Trade Expansion Program, this is our most active program in Global New York that we call the STEP program. And basically, the easiest way to think about this is that this is like a micro grant program to assist your entry into exporting. Next slide, please. So through the STEP program, New York State small businesses can apply for up to $14,000 in grants. In 2020, New York State received STEP 9 award of $250,000 and $500,000 for 2021 continuation. So basically what that means is we currently have $750,000 in the bank. The STEP 9 program actually just started. The expansion because of COVID, we were given extra time to work through the 7th and 8th iteration of the STEP program. So we were still using money that was granted from the Small Business Administration going back almost 3 years. So that program just kicked off, and so there's plenty of money available for these micro grants, and we'll get into that. Next slide, please. So basically, these are the categories, and some of them have been added during the pandemic, and we were told are going to be permanent in the program. So that's great for companies because there's some expanded services that you'll see in here. And these are the categories that we follow. So it's financial assistance for travel, subscription services offered by the U.S. Department of Commerce, export training workshops, qualified trade shows, website content, foreign language translation, development of a marketing campaign internationally, consultant services, and compliance testing. And compliance testing is one of the more recent additions, which is very beneficial when you start to export products globally, because you will see quickly that there are different compliance requirements as you go, and so that's a very helpful grant. And those are the amounts that can be granted for each activity. You're not limited to one activity, so this can really make an impact on your efforts for marketing globally. Next slide, please. So this basically shows the eligibility, again, very similar to the EMAS program. New York State based, in business for at least 1 year, qualify as a small business by the SBA standards. So that's the 500 employees or less again. And have a product or service that contains at least 51% US content. That is something that is an SBA rule and is audited by the SBA. So that is not quite as flexible as the 51% preference for New York State value add. Legitimately, when these funds are used, the companies really should be in compliance with at least 51% US content in the product that they're exporting. Next slide, please. So this is the Global New York Grant Fund. And as I said in the beginning, the Global New York Grant Fund is actually money that comes directly from Empire State Development and comes through our own budgeted grants for the year. That's different from the other two because the EMAS program and the STEP program are financially supported by the SBA in part, and the state matches those funds for EMAS and for the STEP grants. So the Global New York Grant Fund is something that we created to be a little bit more expansive in what we can do to not only promote exporting for companies in New York State, but to help some of our partners in promotion for exporting in New York State. Next slide, please. So this is basically the breakdown, and one of the keys is that bottom part, the nonprofit organizations, grants ranging from 10,000 to 100,000 per year with a 20% cash match. Like I said, this is helpful for us to help support our partners that are out there making contact with you all on a daily basis, so that we can, as a team, put together a stronger picture for exporting out of New York State. For companies' interests, it's grants ranging from 10 to 25,000. You have a 50% cash match. Again, the 51% product value add in New York State. Again, that's fairly flexible, but it's somewhat obvious if you're a New York State-based company, and then we stay with those SBA standards for small businesses. Of course, bigger businesses and Fortune 500 companies and things of that nature that we work with, it's usually in a different function, and it's usually in some sort of a tax credit function rather than helping them export or find trusted distribution channels, because that's something that's typically built into something that rises above the level of an SBA small business. So we keep the entire department really to working with small businesses and working at getting products exported out of New York State. Next slide, please. So this is the eligible activities for the Global New York Grant Fund. Very similar to what we've seen throughout the slide presentation. Market customization, trade shows, export education, product adaptation. I mean, honestly, the bottom line is anything that's related to your efforts to export your product out of New York State globally to any foreign market is something that we will look at for the Global New York Grant Fund. If there's some portion of it that somehow makes it ineligible for a STEP grant or something of that nature, we usually fill in the blank with that Global New York Grant Fund. And then for our nonprofit partners, again, it's all about making contact with the New York State-based companies to try to promote further exports. You know, we know from the perspective of New York State that companies grow and expand at a much faster rate when they're exporting globally than selling only domestically. And so that's a major priority for Empire State Development, and that's where these programs fall. Next slide, please. So that's my contact information, but like Mike said, I think you have that readily available to you just for participating in the event today. Please feel free to reach out to me with any of your business concerns in New York State. Honestly, like I said, I work in multiple departments, but if you're already exporting and you want to ramp that up, if you're looking at getting into exporting your product for the first time from New York State, please reach out to us. That, you know, we have these trusted channels globally, and we can take a lot of the stress out of that initial effort. Plus, we can offer that financial support. And thanks everybody for having me today. I'm really glad that we're doing this. This is very exciting because we don't have enough of these export opportunities in front of our Western New York companies. So this is really great. So thanks, Mike, for putting this together as well.
Well, I'd
Thank
like
you,
to.
Kathy, for actually putting it together.
You got that. I was just going to say thanks a lot to Kathy Sinor and Andrea Kleisik, my deputy commissioner, who really did a great job of putting together this panel of experts. And thank you, RJ, and for putting those links in there. Just a reminder, those links to the applications that RJ has in his slide, you're going to get this, and all you need to do is click on it, and you'll get right to the application. So thanks again, RJ. Our next presenter is Rosanna Masucci from the U.S. Department of Commerce. Rosanna, take it away.
Thanks, Mike. Hi, good morning, everybody. I would like to echo RJ's compliments for putting together this program. It's been a while since we've done anything like this in Niagara County, and it's always great to reach out to the Niagara County companies and let them know about the resources that they have available to them. So, and thank you to the participants that are here listening to us. I know this is not always the ideal situation to be in a WebEx or you know, any kind of meeting that's virtual like this, but it's where we're at right now. So we're going to make the best of it while we can. Next slide, please, Kathy. So I am with the U.S. Commercial Service, and we're part of the U.S. Department of Commerce. We're a federal government agency, and our focus as an agency is to help U.S. businesses to sell their products throughout the world. So we want to provide U.S. companies with access to business opportunities all over the world. And domestically, there are over 100 commercial service offices in the United States. Coverage for upstate New York includes myself. I'm here in Buffalo, New York, and I cover the 8 counties of Western New York. We have an office in Rochester and one in Syracuse, and also downstate in Westchester, New York City, Long Island. So New York State has great coverage with the Commercial Service, Department of Commerce, as well as the other states in the union too. But where we really shine to help companies is our international offices, which are located in 75 countries around the world. And they are located in the U.S. embassies and consulates. And there we have colleagues, trade professionals that can provide expertise across most of the major industry sectors in all the major and emerging markets around the world. Next slide, please. So just to give you an idea of the coverage that we have, and also to let you know that we work in tandem with Global New York Empire State Development. So clearly they have offices internationally, and the services that they offer are free. So when I work with the company and I know that they want to get into a market that's covered by Global New York, I always bring RJ in and have a conversation with the company to find out which can serve their needs best. And if maybe they want to do some programming in tandem to really get full coverage in the market. So it's not a matter of either or, it's a matter of utilizing all the resources, and know that we do work together to make sure that companies in the areas that we cover are getting full coverage for the resources that are available. So just to give you a little bit more information about the makeup of our offices overseas. It's part of the U.S. Embassy and Consulate, as I mentioned, and the State Department runs the actual embassy or consulate. So we are just a small section. The Department of Commerce runs the commercial section, and we are focused specifically on helping U.S. businesses do business in that country. So we have industry specialists that cover obviously particular industries for that country. They have contacts in the market. They attend trade shows regularly in the market so they can counsel US companies to let them know exactly who the partners are that they should be working with, which trade shows they should be participating in, any regulatory issues that they might come up against, who their competitors are in the market that they have to come up against as well. So we have someone in country that can provide US companies with the resources that they need to be fully aware of what they're going to come across when they try to enter into the market. Next slide, please. So this is how we can help you, basically. So my job as a trade specialist domestically is to do programs like this and to meet with companies in my territory on a regular basis to find out what their needs are and how we can customize the services that we provide to give them the information that they need. So we start with mom and pop companies all the way up to larger corporations. So we don't have a size limit in terms of the companies that we can work with. We like to provide, like I said, sit down and talk to companies initially and provide some trade counseling. The colleagues that I mentioned internationally also provide market research and market intelligence information for companies. Our real claim to fame is the business matchmaking programs that we have. So once we sit down and talk to you about which markets you should focus on based on trade data, information that you're currently getting from current customers that you have or people that are coming to you from your website that are asking questions and wanting to purchase products from you. We aggregate all that information and try to figure out where you should focus your efforts. And then we bring in our offices overseas to help actually make matches for you with potential partners. So depending on your sales channel to get into a particular market, whether it's distribution or working with an agent or a sales representative, we can help you figure out who the best partner would be for you and then connect you with those companies in country that can provide you with that type of partnership. We can also help with due diligence. So if you're receiving inquiries from your website, or if you are attending trade shows and getting interest from foreign companies that way, we can help make sure that they are legitimate opportunities for you. We can check on them and make sure they have a good reputation, that they're well known in the market, and that it's a good opportunity for you to partner with them. We offer services at trade events. So sometimes we have US pavilions available at trade shows, which will offer US companies the chance to participate in a trade show at a lower cost and a more turnkey operation. So if a company has never attended a trade show internationally before, it could be a little bit overwhelming with all of the logistics that have to be sorted out in the beginning before you even go to the show. And then when you get to the show, to have support there is important as well. So we host these US pavilions to help smaller sized US companies that want to participate in shows, but don't necessarily have the resources to be able to do that. And of course, utilizing some of the STEP money or the Global New York money from Global New York is really helpful to participate in trade events as well. We can help with in-country promotion of products or services. So if you are launching a new product, or if you've developed a new partnership with a distributor and you'd like to get word out to some potential customers about the type of product that you're selling and how this new partnership is going to work, we can help you with in-country programming, receptions. Sometimes they can be held at the ambassador's residence or the consul general's residence. One example of something that we've done in the past for travel and tourism, we had an organization that was actually located in central New York that wanted to promote their destination to Canadian travel professionals as well as the Canadian population in general. So we arranged a reception for them that was held at the ambassador's house in Ottawa, and he hosted the destination, and we invited the participants, so any of the Canadian trade professionals that would be relevant for day trips or bus trips or things like that. We invited them to the event, and we had the destination talk about what the benefits were of visiting or sending tourists to their particular destination and all that the destination had to offer. So that was an example that we were doing for a tourism destination to promote themselves in a particular market that they were interested in getting into. We also do a lot with website globalization. So just helping US companies determine what subtle changes they can make to their website to attract more of an international audience. And that ranges from just making sure that you have toll numbers listed, because 800 numbers aren't going to necessarily work overseas, all the way to helping you find resources to get your website translated. And then we also help maybe focus your efforts a little bit in terms of translation services and just focusing on those particular products within your catalog that have an international appeal. So you can do things like micro translations and stuff like that. So we can take a look at your website and provide you with a report on things that you can do to make it a little bit more international friendly. One service that we offer that's a little more inherently government is commercial diplomacy. And that is essentially where the US government will advocate to the foreign country's government on behalf of either a US industry or a particular US company. If there's a particularly onerous regulatory standard that has to be complied with that is equivalent to what the US standard is, and it would be nice if the foreign government recognized the US standard, we can advocate on behalf of companies to be able to help them overcome these trade barriers, we'll say, in order to be able to sell into the country. So that's something that we offer as well. We also help companies that are bidding on foreign government tenders. We can advocate on that company's behalf to encourage the foreign government to really take a serious look at what the US company has to offer, and hopefully will lead them to select the US company for the bid tender. We help evaluate international competition. We can help identify and comply with legal and regulatory issues. Again, locating and screening foreign representatives, partners, distributors, agents is our real, is really in our wheelhouse. And we're like the matchmakers of the federal government and international trade. We also help companies understand the whole process that's involved with exporting, including shipping and trade finance. We have great contacts like my fellow presenters here today in the logistics field, so that if you need some help figuring out how you can get your product to these great partners that we find for you, we can definitely refer you to some excellent logistics partners. If you need trade financing assistance, we have excellent partners that we work with in the banking sector, as well as through Export-Import Bank and the Small Business Administration that can provide some trade financing specifically to companies. It's important when you're doing business internationally to understand the cultural issues and the business protocol. We have a market research report called our Country Commercial Guides, which provide really great information about the economic situation, political situation, business protocol, and things like that within a country. And that's definitely something that I can set you up with. So essentially, we start from the beginning where we assess your export readiness. We help you identify those key markets, figure out your sales potential, and help you implement your export plan to be strategic in your exporting efforts, so that you're not wasting your time, you're not wasting potential partners' times, and you are really looking at where the lowest hanging fruit is so that you can really maximize your efficiency. Next slide, please. So thanks so much for your time. If you would like to sit down with me, this is the way we're going to have to sit down for the foreseeable future. But have a one-on-one conversation, have an idea of what you're interested in doing in terms of international business, and then what customized services we have that can help you move forward and be successful. So please don't hesitate to give me a call, send me an email, and I'm happy to sit down one-on-one with people.
Thank you, Rosanna. Really appreciate you being here. I'll tell you what, one thing that came out of this global pandemic is this virtual platform. And I'll tell you what, we've been able to reach more and more companies through this platform. We may, even after we climb out of this thing, continue to do these programs virtually. It really works well. Thanks again, Rosanna. Our next presenter is William Catay. He's the executive director of Toronto GTA chapter of the American Chamber of Commerce in Canada. So William, take it away. William, you might want to unmute yourself. It's not, we can't hear you.
Okay, thank
There you go.
you for reminding me to unmute myself, and thank you for inviting me to this great panel. I know a few of the people on there, and I'm honored to join them. I am William Kittay. I'm Executive Director of the Toronto GTA chapter of the American Chamber of Commerce in Canada. AmCham Canada is one of approximately 190 AmChams located throughout the world. If there is a country and there's an economy, then there's probably going to be an AmCham there. In Canada, in Toronto, our job is to help facilitate the two-way flow of trade and investment across the most successful economic relationship in the history of civilization. Yes, the United States and Canada trades more than any other country pair in the world, but we can always do better. We help U.S. businesses come up to Canada and get to know the people there and get to know the lay of the land, the marketplace, the suppliers. And we also help Canadian businesses expand into the U.S. And I think you'll find, in accordance with what RJ and what Rosanna says, there's a lot of collaboration between our different organizations. We work with state trade promotion organizations. A number of them have offices in Toronto, but we work with them no matter where they're located. And one of our strategic assets is our relationship with the U.S. Foreign Commercial Service, the foreign counterpart to Rosanna's team. And Rosanna had mentioned that there's a great team in Toronto led by Martin Claessens, who's the chief commercial attaché, and Nathan Donahue, working with Consul General Susan Crystal. They help us with our mission, we help them with theirs. So we like to think we're all on the same team, helping your business grow and expand across the border, in our case in Canada, but if your suppliers or customers are in another country, there's an AmCham that can help you there. So, consider us, all there to be assisted. Next slide, please. My presentation is probably more academic than the others. If you look at my LinkedIn profile, you see I spent too much time in education. So I think academically. So I'm going to go over some of the nuts and bolts of international expansion, talk about the benefits and the burdens. I think the benefits are self-evident. That's the reason why you're attending this event. Gives you the opportunity to grow, to leverage your investment, to maximize the potential of your time, your capital, and all those resources you put in there. It also allows you to diversify marketplace, so you're not too tied into one country and their macroeconomic situation, or their marketplace. You can help spread out your company's products and services geographically, and also allows you to provide market intelligence. Different countries, grow their economies in different ways at different times, and you're able to gain things about the acceptance of your products and services in another country you may not be able to if you're in the home country. But we're going to spend most of the time talking about burdens, because while I'm executive director for AmCham, I've been a lawyer for over 25 years. And you only talk to lawyers when you talk about burdens. So we're going to talk about the risk and vulnerability your company may face when going into another country, the need to stay flexible, to adjust to inconsistent laws and regulations, not just between a foreign country and your home country, but also within the country as well. Taxation considerations, because the only thing that's certain is once you make your first sale in another country, that government's going to want their take. So you need to figure out a way to try to meet that obligation, but do so in a way that's best for your business. And then finding a team. And I think that's hopefully something that's a theme to this presentation. You need people who can help guide you into the other country, not just trade promotion, not just foreign commercial service, but service providers such as accountants, bankers, lawyers, site selectors. So, figuring out what your team is and how to move forward. Next slide, please. So the benefits, I'm going to go over really quickly. I put a lot of the information on the slide, so you can look at it at your leisure. but allowing you to expand internationally opens up other markets for your business so that you can go down the experience curve, you can increase the return from your investment and lower per unit costs. It also allows your business to tap other opportunities not available in the home market, differing tastes, differing ways of configuration. International expansion allows you to leverage that in a way that's not available domestically. Expanding internationally also allows you to tap into countries at different stages of economic life cycle, which is a good sort of portfolio strategy. It also allows for connection with a wider network of suppliers and service providers, which I think is been really highlighted recently because supply chain is an issue for every business, whether it's manufacturing, whether it's service, whether it's large, whether it's small. And one way to possibly address that is to be in closer geographic connection with your supplier. So if your business is determined that for economic reasons it makes sense to have a supplier in, say, Brazil, you may want to consider, opening up a market there because, at least the supply chain is compressed and may work out well for you. And that's just one example of diversification. And then market intelligence. Certain things are, discovered or explored in other countries. And by being in markets in those countries, you figure out what works for your company, what doesn't in terms of their products, in terms of their services. Next slide, please. But being a lawyer, I'm going to spend most of the time on the burdens because if international expansion was easy, you wouldn't need people to help guide you. You just follow the opportunity, and you should, but you should do it smartly. First is risk, and when you can open up, you can have your home country business expand into another market and not set up any legal steps to do it. You just Product USA Inc. or something like that. You do business in Canada, you do business in Turkey, in Singapore that way. But the problem is that whatever risk, whatever claims your company is experiences in another country, you are risking your home country's assets unless you set up separate legal structures in each country you want to do business. And that allows for limitation of liability, keeps your home country assets safe and protected. So it's important to set up a corporation or other legal structure in a country where a company does business to make sure that what stays in the foreign country, what happens in the foreign country stays in the foreign country. Be careful in expanding overseas. Those of you who are based in the US, you're somewhat lucky and blessed because the US allows for business structures that combine the best of both worlds. Because if you look at my last bullet point, the trade-off in corporate structure is taxes versus risk. When you incorporate, generally it's considered a separate entity, so it's taxed on a separate basis. And then if you want the profits from that to your parent company as a form of dividend, that gets taxed too. That's why it's called double taxation. The US allows for entities such as LLCs, such as limited partnerships, that are disregarded entities to remove that double taxation aspect. However, not every country is as creative and as flexible as the United States. So, for example, Canada does not allow LLCs. And not only that, Canada will not allow one of its corporations to own an LLC. So be mindful about the territory you're coming into and figure out what's the best ways to protect your business as a whole legally. Next slide, please. And that leads to another burden, which is inconsistent governance structures. And it's just simply, different laws and different regulations. Why? Because different countries have different values. And the population in those countries express these different values in the laws. So rules that govern your business locally may be invalid in other countries. So for example, if you're in the US, one of the advantages you have is that you have employment at will. So you're able to terminate people without notice and without severance, simply because the economic situation doesn't justify the retention of these employees. They're good people, they like how they work, but the market's not working out. So you can terminate these people and keep financial flexibility. Canada, as an example, does not have that. They have what's known as the Employment Standards Act. And so under law, under statute, you need to provide a certain minimum amount of severance to, if you want to terminate someone other than for cause. And we know what cause means, theft, embezzlement, things like that. But if the economics just doesn't work, you may have to pay employees up to 2 years worth of severance. So just understand that, take that into account when you're thinking about expanding into another country and figure out what do they require of businesses that may be different than what you're used to. Also be mindful if you're going into a federal jurisdiction. The United States is, many of you know Canada is, but countries such as Brazil, such as Germany are federal. So they have subnational jurisdictions to deal with. And as you know, in the US, the states may disagree with the federal government. The municipalities may get involved. So you may have to juggle a lot of different ways of doing business. And, think about that before you decide to, put all your chips in the center of the table and say, I'm going to expand here. Doesn't mean you shouldn't expand, but just be aware of that. And then also, the more countries you're in, the more jurisdictions there are, the more chances there are to be changes in the legal regime. So be careful to monitor emerging trends, emerging issues in those countries. Have that team that I'll talk about later be there for you and give you a call, send you an email saying, hey, something's happening in France that I think you need to be aware of, and you may need to respond to that. So be flexible, be open, and be responsive. Next slide, please. Taxation. It's the old joke. The only thing certain is death and taxation. As soon as you make $1 in a foreign country, that foreign country is going to want a part of it, and there's no way around it. Now, there's triggers in terms of when you're subject to taxation, but it's a very low bar. Canada and the US have something called a permanent establishment, but it's not how it sounds. You hear permanent establishment, you say, okay, well, I got to set up a manufacturing site, or I got to set up an office. If you have no fixed address in the country, but you hire an agent, someone who just represents you, it doesn't have to be for sales, it could just be for supply or something like that. That's considered a permanent establishment, and therefore you're subject to tax there. So be prepared to have to deal with taxes, and be prepared of the the interplay of the tax liability amongst jurisdictions, not only amongst countries but within the country. Real quick example: I represent in my legal practice a number of screenwriters and other producers who are based in Canada and work in the Southern California. And you'd think that they'd want to incorporate in California, but actually they incorporate in Delaware and register as a foreign corporation in California, because when you do that, when you have to pay franchise tax in California, in that situation, you're only liable for the revenue you generate in California. If you incorporate in California, your franchise tax is worldwide income. So they do a gig in Canada, they do a gig in Georgia, they do a gig in Europe. They'd be subject to taxation in California if they're a California corporation. But the Delaware corporation is just licensed to do business in California, they're not subject to that. So it's a very intricate interplay. And again, just think about where you want to go, what you want to do, have trusted advisors, and proceed accordingly. A lot of countries use license fees as a backdoor taxation method. Just be mindful of that. Don't just say, oh, I like this place, it's got no corporate income tax. They'll probably make it up in some other way. They'll probably have a high bar in terms of getting the license to be able to do business in that country. So just be mindful of that. And then also know that there's taxation related issues associated with bringing your profits back home. Many countries are going to have withholding tax. You're going to move profits outside the country. Canada and the US are pretty good. They've got a pretty good treaty. It reduces the withholding to 5%. But when you think about which country you want to expand to, all other things being equal, think about what would be the cost of bringing your profits home. Next slide, please. Trusted teammates, and I think that's just something I have been talking about throughout. And it's not just the U.S. Department of Commerce or Global New York or other state organizations. It's private organizations as well. And that's because when you enter into another country, you are the outsider. That country has got a marketplace that is a combined whole where everyone knows each other upstream, downstream. competitors, peers, substitutes, or whatever, and you are the interloper. There's a natural human tendency to look at you, with some, with some degree of skepticism and make it sort of not as approachable as someone they know that they do business with, that they may know personally. So, find people who know the local territory, who know the way things are done, and have them be a guide. The advisors, the team that you look at, you see the list there. Honestly, even though I'm a lawyer, I think probably the first enterprise you should look for is accountants, because they know the language of business in that country, and they could help you, figure out how best to array your assets in that country to maximize your return. But lawyers, bankers, if you need financing, site selectors, come up with a team and a plan, and then expand overseas. Next slide, please. So resources, and I think the good news is that a lot of my fellow presenters have talked about resources. Global New York, U.S. Foreign Commercial Service, a lot of your local resources, law firms, accountants, etc., are part of networks. Even if they're small, they're part of worldwide networks. And if you want to expand into, say Thailand, they may have a peer organization in Thailand, and they'll be happy to make the introduction. And that entity can serve as a guide for you. So there are private solutions as well as public and quasi-public solutions. Business promotion associations, AmCham Canada is one, AmCham Worldwide is another. But if you want to go to, if you're a U.S. business and want to go to the United Kingdom, there's the British American Chamber of Commerce. If there's a country, if there's a G7 or G20 country, a country with economic development, there's going to be an AmCham there that's going to help you maximize your opportunities in that foreign country, and they will work with the appropriate diplomatic resources, and they will work with the appropriate government promotion resources in that country to help ease your entry into that country. So, reach out to those people. They're here to work with others to help your country, help your company transition as seamlessly into another country as possible. And then economic promotion organizations, you've heard from two good ones, government funded, such as Department of Commerce or NGO. There again, they guides. The key is to find lots of guides. You're going up to the mountain, at the top of the mountain, you'll see your goal, your vision, your success, but you need good guides. Nothing else. That I hope you can take away from this presentation. One last thing is that it's a race, it's a competition. Rosanna and her team, they're trying to promote the U.S. If for some reason, because of private economic industry factors, it makes sense to go to another country, you will find that there will be resources in that country vying for your company's dollars. Take advantage of their interests, maximize the chance of your success, and that will make sure that there's going to be bumps, there's going to be bruises, there's going to be curveballs, but you minimize the impact of those as best as possible. Next slide, please. So given all that, benefits and burdens, expanding internationally, is it worth it to enter the marketplace in another country? Absolutely, no question about it. Allows your international expansion, allows your business the opportunity to leverage its investments, diversifies customer base and supply chain, maximizes market opportunities. You had a vision when you started your business, and a way to go down that path and to realize that vision is to implement it and to maximize its potential. And international expansion allows that. So by all means, it's scary. We all like what's comfortable, but take advantage of what you built up and find the right opportunity for your company in another country when the timing is right. Next slide, please. Thank you very much for your time. I hope you appreciate it. You have my contact information there. We, as long as the other panelists, are here to help, and all the best in helping your company reach its potential. Thank you.
Thank you, William. Appreciate your presentation and being here to talk to our participants today. Our next presenter, Mr. Jim Trubitz from Mohawk Global Trade Advisors. Jim, you're up. Are you there, Jim? I don't want to skip over Jim if he's there right now. Jim, are you there? If you're there, you might want to unmute yourself because we can't hear.
He was having some trouble with his microphone and hearing everybody earlier, so I think he's having some trouble.
Jim, we can't hear you, Jim. I don't know what the issue is.
Skip on to Dean and see if we can come back.
Well,
Okay.
that's assuming you can hear me.
We can.
We can hear you, Dean. Let's move over to Dean and Jim. You try to fix that microphone, and we'll get back to you.
Slides.
Dean, you're up from BorderWorks Logistics, our friend here in the park. Let Kathy get to your slides, and we'll come back to Jim.
There you go, Dean.
There you go. Okay, Dean, take it away.
Hmm.
Did we lose Dean?
He's got some bandwidth issues.
Oh,
Okay,
There we go.
okay.
is that Jim?
Can you see me and hear me? I should be
That's
back now.
Dean.
Am I back?
We can hear
Yes.
you.
If for some reason, can you hear me now, Bill?
Is that Jim?
Yep, I'm back. So maybe we start back and maybe we can get Dean caught up.
Okay.
Okay, sorry about this, guys.
No problem.
Okay. Let's face
Hi,
it.
Jim.
Jim Trubitz here with Mohawk. We're going to talk today about different ways to defer duties, avoid duties, and possibly recover duties. So we're going to, next slide, Kathy. So one of the things that we have is that customs in every country imposes a duty. In the US, we have duties for normal trade relations, which is the most favored nation rate. On top of that, sometimes there's additional duties for anti-dumping and countervailing. Also, we have 232 tariffs on steel and aluminum. And then we have 301 duties on products coming in from China. So in case, you do get in a situation like this with components or finished units that you're planning on bringing in, maybe incorporating into an article, and then possibly exporting again, there's opportunities, there's ways to defer the money or avoid it. So let's look at some of these strategies. Next slide. Now look at, there's ways that you can eliminate paying the duties and taxes and fees. There's other ones where possibly you're just going to reduce them. And other ones, there's ways to recover it. And then there's ways to defer it. So goods that come in 1 month, you can actually pay the duties and taxes the next month. So let's go on to the next slide. So what's duty deferral? Goods coming into the country, but the duty's deferred to a later date. So what are some mechanisms or strategies for this? Next slide. We're going to look at ways to free up cash flow. The less you have to pay out the duties, that helps your bank flow, helps your lending with the banks. Your overall line of credit looks better. It's going to reduce the number of outlays. So there's a couple mechanisms that are really easy, low-hanging fruit. One of them, Customs has a program called ACH, the Automated Clearinghouse, where goods are cleared and then you would have like a couple weeks to pay the duties. They also have something called periodic monthly statement. With periodic monthly statement, people can actually import the goods 1 month and they pay them mid-month the next month. Very similar to what they have with GST in Canada, where goods are paid on the following month. But if you think about this, this improves your cash flow by at least 3 weeks. Next slide, please. So here's a great item that people can do is there is bonded warehouses where you can defer the duties. So you bring the goods into the bonded warehouse. You can store them up to 5 years, and then you only pay the duty upon withdrawal. Next slide. So goods come in on a customs entry. Next slide. You pay the duty only when the goods are exported or entered into the United States. If they're exported, you'll never pay the duty. So in effect, you could have 2 scenarios where you have stuff that's coming in and is going to enter into the United States. There's other stuff that you're going to re-export to another country. In that case, you would completely avoid paying the duties. So it's a good cash management tool. Dean's going to talk more about foreign trade zones in a second, but next slide, please. So we're going to touch lightly on this. So Dean has what's called the general purpose zone. So with the foreign trade zone, it's not considered part of the customs territory. The duties, the taxes, the fees aren't due until the goods are withdrawn for consumption. So once they're entered in the United States, then there'd be a duty impact. Unfortunately, there's a couple provisions in the law that say section 232 and 301 duties are still considered privileged foreign status. There's different statuses when you enter goods into a foreign trade zone. That duty at the higher rate would still apply. Next slide. But here's some of the advantages, and Dean's going to talk at greater length. You can commingle foreign and domestic goods. You can repackage, you can kit. It could be strictly an export distribution center. You can repair in there. You can just do destruction. There is manufacturing, but those are subzones, and those are normally allocated to companies, not general purpose zones. So it would be someone like maybe manufacturing machinery, things like that. So under those scenarios, this subzone would be set up strictly to do manufacturing, things like that. Next slide, please. So there is ways to completely eliminate duties, and so this is kind of where people this is a great way to save a lot of money. So besides duty on imports into the US, there's something called customs user fees, which is called a merchandise processing fee. These under the next slide, under like a free trade agreement, we have 14 free trade agreements with over 21 countries that allow the goods to come into the United States without payment of duties or payment of the merchandise processing fees. And one of the shining stars right now is that USMCA, the latest revision of NAFTA. In this case, the rules have been simplified. It's a very easy process to bring your goods in if they qualify duty-free. Next slide. So, normally products are going to qualify one of 3 ways. The goods originate in the territory. What do I mean by that? They're grown, they're harvested, they're mined in one of the customs territories. So if it's an agreement between Canada, Mexico, and the US, it has to be produced in that territory, grown out of the ground, something like cows and corn. Or transformed. You're taking inputs from other countries and transforming them into an article that qualifies. Or all the products were manufactured using originating materials from Canada, Mexico, and the US. Next slide. Okay, so we had a lot of talk previously from Rosanna, from other parties about trade shows, about certifying your goods overseas to make sure they meet a special, something like the CE mark. There's a provision, there's a document here that you can use called an ATA carnet. So it allows you to export goods to another country, let's say China, and you want to get your goods CCC marked. So they're going to go through that qualification program. Many times the Chinese government requires you to bring them in on something called a carnet. Or let's say you're going to do a trade show in overseas. By doing this, you're going to enter these goods into that country and not have to pay any duties, value-added taxes. And when they come back to the US, they're going to come back duty-free without making entry as well. This is a great tool. We joke about it and call it the passport for your goods. Just like you have to have a passport to get into China, same thing upon return, you need the passport to get back into the US. This passport would be for the goods that you're sending over there. Unfortunately, consumable goods are not covered. So if you're going to bring pens and notepads and giveaways, those would not be covered. But the actual items, the trade show booth, the actual item that's going to get examined and certified, those would be covered under it. Next slide, please. So we talked a little bit about 232 duties and 301 duties. Recently, there's been we had these these additional duties implied, added onto it. There is a way to avoid paying those in the first place, and that's to bring the goods in if they're going to be manufactured and then re-exported. So give you an example, you might have some steel strip, and the strip's going to be fabricated and then sent back out of the country. Instead of paying the 25% under the 232 duties, you wouldn't have to pay it. Under the 232 tariffs, and this is something people feel free to reach out to me, there's no way to recover it under duty drawback. So if you pay the 20%, you're out of luck. But you can bring it in under a TIB, temporary import bond, and avoid paying those 25% duties in the first place. So, obviously the goods either have to be exported or destroyed. But this program works for goods that are coming in or manufacturing to be further exported. They can't stay domestically. Next slide, Kathy. So duty recoveries where the duties are paid at time of import, and then on time of export or destruction, if it's done under customs supervision, the duties can be recovered. And what can be recovered is 99% of the duties. That's what customs keeps 1%. Next slide. Okay. So obviously I jumped a little bit there. So, but you can see that they're going to give you back 99% of your duties and any user fees, merchandise processing fees that was paid on the goods. So a lot of people set up a duty drawback program, and depending on their volume, they'll submit monthly, quarterly, twice a year, once a year, and recover those duties. But I mean, with the 25% tariff on the Section 301 goods, duty drawbacks really taken off. And so many parties are taking advantage of that on their exports. There is caveats I want to say here still, that, you got to read the fine print and you need to talk with a drawback specialist. Just reading the overview maybe on customs website, you would think, wow, this is going to be easy, but you really need to talk with an expert and make sure that you have it well documented. Duty drawback comes down to having the best documents. If you have good record keeping, this program might be for you. Next slide. Here's some of the common industries that are filed drawback. And, like wine and spirits, tobacco, believe it or not, it does it. But there's other ones, pharmaceuticals, aerospace, electronics. The list is long. Next slide. So we have different types of drawbacks. So this is why I said you really need to talk with a drawback specialist. Some if it's unused merchandise, some if it was manufactured, some for rejected, and sometimes you'll have stuff that comes in and has to be destroyed. Next slide, Kathy. So real quick recap, you get 99% back because either have to be exported or destroyed. And you have a window of like 3 to 5 years from the time of import to recover those duties. After, if you tried to file drawback on stuff that was imported 7 years ago, it'll be past that window. And like I said, there's no drawback provision for 232 duties or anti-dumping duties or countervailing. So, and then there's a little thing for the USMCA duty deferral snag. If you got goods that you're going to bring in, pay the duties on, and then export them to Canada or Mexico, they don't allow drawback on that. I can get into details with you if you have questions on that. Next slide, please. Thank you very much, and we'll go from there.
Jim, great information. Thank you so much for the presentation. Glad we got the mic working.
Yeah, me
Now we're
too.
gonna flip it. Yeah, absolutely. That's the only drawback with virtual, but we'll get through it.
Yeah.
Our next presenter is from right here in our park, our neighbor, Dean Wood from Border Works Logistic, who's the administrator of Foreign Trade Zone number 34. Dean, take it away.
All right. Thank you, Mike. My WebEx with that extension was crashing a couple of times, so I'm not going to touch anything. I'll be right back.
This is where we should have had a musical interlude. With my issues getting on in the beginning, and now, some of these technical issues. But I'll tell you what, it still is a lot of great information for a lot of folks. So we'll get through these little hiccups. Hopefully,
Okay.
Dean will be back momentarily.
I am back. It seems like I'm good
All
for
right.
about 5 minutes and then it crashes into it. First slide.
I see Dean still there, but I think, Dean, we can't hear you.
Okay, I'm back on. Let's see how long I can last. Just checking. You can hear me all right, right? Okay.
Yes.
Just checking the news. 157 ships are sitting anchored outside the port of Los Angeles. It'll be 2 months before their cargo comes in. This little chip that I have right here in this little thumb drive is causing a huge delay that there's car dealerships with no product on their lots. Take a look at the growth of e-commerce, 734% since 2010. And here's what's surprising of what's gone online. You can now buy your casket online, and you can save about 70% of what you paid at a funeral home. Things and times are changing, as it says with Bob Dylan. So it is really an interesting thing. And now leaders are being asked, they don't ask, should I outsource? They're asking, how much should I outsource? So the good thing about this is all the professionals that are in the supply chain right now are totally unequipped to be able to give good advice because nobody can predict what's going on. The shortages of furniture that IKEA is now saying, will stretch into 2023. If you haven't bought your Christmas presents, there's a good chance you may not get them as of the end of this month in time for Christmas. So supply chain is critical, and I'm glad you're having these kinds of conversations. Let's talk about some options. Next slide. Did it go? There we go. So you're right. Mike mentioned it. Foreign Trade Zone 34 got activated just a couple of years ago, and that's the outline of the industrial park. And we are the operator for that foreign trade zone. Next slide, you'll see where we are located. Just, well, it's actually offset itself, but it's just to the left curve of that area is 32 acres of our land that we are operating a foreign trade zone in. The next slide. And so what is for a foreign trade zone? Jim's already mentioned to it. It's designated and not considered that you're in the United States when you first come into that zone. It allows you to stage goods inside the US without carrying the expense of the various fees for customs. And just to Jim's point with regards to duty drawback, what he didn't mention there is any service provider that provides that duty drawback service doesn't give you the 99% that the government gives you back. They scoop a percentage out of it. They love doing duty drawback because they can pick up 10, 15, sometimes 20% of your drawback claim as revenue for them. So it's always better to try to not to have to pay the duty or get exposed to that at the front end, because that process, unlike Canada, it's extremely cumbersome, and oftentimes it does not result in the positive that you're looking for. But what a free trade zone basically is like, it's like having an embassy. It's like sending something to an embassy in a foreign country, in this case, the United States, but you haven't entered the country. So you don't have to pay any of the responsible duties and taxes until your goods actually enter that and are forwarded on to your consignee. So that allows you to manipulate and control your cash flow. Next slide. So I'm going to give you an example. There's this fee called a merchandise processing fee. It's a percentage on the value of goods that U.S. Customs charges for anything that's manufactured outside the country. The good news is they cap that amount depending on the value that you have coming into the country. They cap it at $528. So for example, I'm going to give you a little bit of an example of how this works, but there you can see if you had 300 different customs entries in the course of a year, and every time you had it, you maxed out your MPF at $528. You'd pay $158,499 in just the MPF fee, not even the duty. This is just their fees. But when you're in a foreign trade zone, you get the luxury of doing one entry per week. That allows you to take those 300 entries and convert them to 52. Look at the money that falls from the top, the expense line directly to your profit. It's non-recoverable, and this is something that you would be paying out, but this way you can minimize this, and that's an instant savings to you to be able to do it. The other thing, the difference between a bonded warehouse and an FTZ is that there's actually no limit that your goods can be stored in an FTZ. And the nice part, as Jim mentioned, if all of a sudden you're in the apparel business and you bring in $1 million worth of clothes, and well, we're going to use an example here. And let's say you don't use them all in that country and you want to now send them to a second country to liquidate them. You've never had to pay the duty, and you never will have to pay the duty to be able to do that. And the fees to move in and out of a FTZ are slightly higher than a regular customs entry, but it is significantly, when you look at the reduction from 300 to 52, it's by far less expensive than doing complete consumption entries throughout the year. The next slide. And I'm giving an example here. If you're importing 20,000 mirrors for your next season, you're in the home goods business, and I'm using this because it actually happened, okay? So they bring in 20,000 mirrors to be able to supply Home Depot, Wayfair, Walmart, all of those guys, Zulily, Hay Needle, and all those guys. They paid $22 for each mirror. That's a $440,000 expense spread over 3 containers. Well, typically when they would come in, that 440,000 would come in at about 31.5% duty. They'd have laid out $138,000 in duty. Then they would have had $1,500 in MPF fees. And they would have probably had to finance that because this inventory is in for the next season. So they haven't actually sold it yet. So at a nominal interest rate, which the bankers online would probably say that's a good rate for lending for inventory, they would pay another 4,500 in interest. They're going to lay out 144.
Well, we had him for a long time there, but we lost him.
Okay,
Here we go.
we'll keep going.
There he is.
So you're going to lay out, I'll just keep running back into just 10 seconds.
Okay, apologies for our technical difficulties. I think you see, we all get the point with that slide for sure. Use of the foreign trade zone is a
There you
is a
go.
definite positive. There you are, Dean.
Yes, so using a foreign trade zone, you're laying out none of this. Next slide.
Unfortunately, Dean keeps popping in and popping out. He's almost at the end of his presentation here. I don't want to speak for you, Dean, but there are the benefits of using that foreign trade zone. You heard a
I'm
lot
back.
about that, duty eliminate. There you go. Go ahead, finish up, Dean. We're gonna have an issue with getting through this. I can see that. There are the benefits of using the FTZ, Kathy. If you can continue to the next slide. Border Works
so we-
Logistics is low. Go ahead. Go
So
ahead,
we're back.
Dean. We're definitely having bandwidth issues there at Border Works at this point. But they're located right here at Vantage International Point in our park. All the services are there. Go to the next slide, Kathy, with Dean's contact information. It's right there. And again, you're going to get the slide deck. You click on any of those links there and you'll get to Dean. So Dean, I'm sorry we couldn't get the rest of your presentation from you. But we're at a point now where if there are any questions, Kathy, from our participants.
We don't have any right now, Mike, but I'm sure that people will want to follow up directly with our panelists today.
Thank you so much. And thank you for attending the workshop, folks. We had some great information there for you. Again, any of our panelists would like to talk to you one-on-one. When you leave this session, you're going to be receiving a survey that'll appear in a new window of your browser. We definitely would appreciate your comments and feedback, and we hope to see you at a future event. We're going to have one more workshop in 2021 come December, so hopefully we'll see you then. Until that time, thanks again to our panelists. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.